Hi, my name is Shantell Quintanar. I'm a realtor in Denver, Colorado.
Hi, I'm Laura Melquist, a realtor in Colorado and Minnesota.
This is the M.O.R.E podcast. We are the mothers of real estate. We are really talking about family, real estate, wealth building, and anything related to just building a great community.
So today we wanted to talk about friendship, right? We were kind of talking about what friendship issues people sometimes have or different stages in life. Recently, I've just had a couple different scenarios, not only in my own life, but with other friends that, I don't know if it's like, what do they say, Mercury in retrograde, but there's been some friendship issues on the horizon and people falling out of friendships or having little disputes. What do you think causes most friendship disputes, would you say? Like in your experiences when you've had disputes with friends, what does that mean?
I think there's, obviously a difference of opinion on
Sure.
a certain topic. But I think there can be many factors. Some of it's a maturity level. I know really transitioning from high school relationships to college relationships to being in your 20s to being in your 30s. I've had friends where I had to grow up fairly quickly. And so, my mid 20s, I found myself hanging out with more 30-year-olds that were a little bit more mature and different things of that. So I think there's a little bit of that. But in all honesty, I think a lot of people realize that their values might not be aligning with these people, and that's what's causing a lot of difference of opinions. But I think each situation is unique and different. And there's been friends where we have grown apart or we've gotten into a dispute and maybe we just don't talk anymore.
Yeah.
And others where maybe we were able to resolve it in a day, or maybe it took 3 years and we're, back being friends again.
I feel that. I think that's a good blanket statement as far as like a difference of focus or values around certain things. Because when I'm thinking about, I had a situation recently where I just kind of realized that the person doesn't fare me well to be a friend when they get upset. I don't really like the way they conduct themselves. I don't really like, they can come across as degrading, those kind of things. And so I had a situation where it was like, we were never really like super great friends, but that scenario of just lack of similarities when it comes to, the way we treat people, to me was enough to say like, I'm not really interested in really continuing this. And I think on a molecular level, that's kind of their personality. So it's like, I'm not going to expect you to change your personality for me, like that's just a preference of mine, as I don't like to be talked to a certain way, or when you're stressed out. You and I have had this before, like, if you get stressed out, I'm like, calm down. Like, I have like a weird, like protecting my energy kind of scenario. And I had a friend recently that had another falling out. And I think what it really boiled down to is it boiled down to jealousy. It boiled down to that person wanted to be the center of attention always. They wanted to get their attention constantly. They didn't want to have other friends, which to me is really crazy because I'm like, as an adult, I'm not jealous when my friends have other friends.
Yep.
But I've seen that a lot.
Yeah. I've had that happen in friendships in the past. And I think what's hard is when your other friends recognize it before you do sometimes. So I had a friend in particular, and she would purposely tell me, where I'd say, oh, what should I wear? And she'd pick out like the most horrendous outfit for me to wear. And it was subtle in the beginning, but she did that because she always wanted to look better than me wherever we would go.
Okay.
And so she would sabotage stuff. And I actually had another friend who happened to, see this interaction, and she was just like, that's atrocious, or different things of, you go to social media and she would be posting these crazy photos where like I'm literally in the background like looking crazy.
That is a no-no for Laura. Laura has had me taking 45-minute impromptu photo shoots to make sure we get the photo. So that is a no-no.
But like just different things like that where she was consistently doing that or putting me down without me realizing that to other people to try to build herself up.
Insecure.
And for me, I'm detail oriented when it comes to work. I need to preface that before I say what I'm going to say. But when it comes to everyday life and like me just like going in social settings, I'm sometimes not the most observant person. And my ADHD does come into play there where I'm a little bit all over the place. And so I wasn't recognizing those things. And it actually took another friend to point that out to me, for me to recognize it and me to address the situation. And so I think a lot of times with our friends, we have to remember that, you know, our friends shouldn't judge us, but they should keep us accountable for things.
Yeah, like being legitimately like, hey girl, your outfit looks crazy, or hey, go fix your hair or whatever. That's different, I think, than like somebody criticizing or trying to sabotage that. And I think insecurity is definitely a relationship killer in general, because when you can't cheer for each other, you can't, you know, when you're trying to do those. It was just so strange to me because for me, I want my friends to win. I like when my friends are badasses. And somebody made a comment to me a couple months ago and they said, you know, it's just hard for two strong women to be friends. And I was like, I disagree. Like almost all of my friends have always been very outspoken. They're no nonsense. They have, you know, their own successes. They feel confident. There's no real competition. We're not trying to outdo each other. We're running our own race. We're trying to support each other when we can. And I think, unfortunately, that's a cattiness that sometimes gets associated with women. And it's unfortunate because a lot of us don't think like that. And I think you not noticing that in your friendship is probably also because you wouldn't do that. So it's hard to even wrap your brain around that if you're not that kind of person.
Yep. No. And it was, but I needed the friend to point that out to me. Right. At first, when she pointed out to me, I was like, oh, that's crazy. You just don't like her or something. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you get some of your friends together
and they
just don't vibe.
Yeah.
Or they both think they're, you know, you're younger. Kind of have these placeholders, right? I can even relate. Oh, my son has his best friend, and then he has his other friend,
right?
And
second best friend, third best friend,
and third. But you get the first best friend and the second best friend together, and oh my gosh, they don't like each other all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, you know, I'm not going to say women or men because men can be this way as well.
Sure.
That can go well into your adulthood with those same, you know, not as, you know, catty, like, oh, I'm his best friend. You're not going to have those kind of conversations, I would hope.
You'd be surprised.
But that kind of goes into that. And then as, you know, you get older and stuff, you start maturing a little bit more and, you know, finding that silly. But I've been around, you know, adults that are 40, 50 years old, and they're still acting like that. And
yeah.
So I think really recognizing, you know, who you have, you know, that have similar values to you, and people that can keep you accountable, because there's been many times where, you know, I don't want to be judged by my friends, but I want them to check me every once in a while.
Yeah.
And let me know that, like, hey, that wasn't okay that you did that. Or, you know, did you realize this? And there's a way to approach that with your friends that I think is very, very crucial in everyday life, because we're all going to make mistakes sometimes. And it's having that good core group of people that are going to look out for you. And those people and those friends that aren't checking you, like, are they really your friends? Because they should.
Yeah. If it's coming from a place of like real love, I think that's different. I don't know if you've had this experience, but I've lost friends at different points in life, and luckily some of them have came back because we really were friends. But like significant others are a reason that sometimes you lose friendship with somebody. Sometimes I just love you to death, but I hate your boyfriend or husband, and I can't get past that. Especially, I've never had a hard time allowing, like, if I don't like you just because I don't like you, fine, right? Like, I'm not with you, so that's fine.
Yep. Irrelevant.
Them disrespecting my friend that I care about, and my friend continuing to allow it, will send me into like this like psychopathic mode. And that's probably my own, again, issues of being a little too territorial, because, you know, if I know you're constantly cheating on my friend, or you're degrading her and making her feel terrible, or you're, you know, just not pulling your weight and you're making her feel just so down and out all the time, I've been that friend that has, I don't try to like go vocal and say, I hate this guy and he's the worst and whatever, but like eventually it comes to a place, and obviously they're going to normally pick their significant other, right? But then usually I'm right. And then eventually that person is in the picture, and then we can get back to friendship again.
Yep. Or Shantell will just show up to their house.
Oh yeah. I've definitely possibly attacked somebody in a restaurant one of the days when they had a different girl with them. But those are some of those things that it's like, again, I am maybe an extreme friend because I don't take everyone on as my friend. So if I'm your friend, the term ride or die is a real thing for me. Like, I will absolutely be the one that helps you hide the body. I didn't say that on air today. But that's kind of one of those things where, to me, I expect my friend to really have my back. And like you said, be honest about if I need to hear something, that's okay. As long as I know it's coming from, you're not just trying to sabotage me and make me look crazy out in public.
Yep. Yep. No. Well, hopefully I did that early on.
Yeah, right?
Someone came at her lips at one point, but I misunderstood the situation.
Yeah, that's a good example of like friendship. You thought someone was insulting me. I don't think they were. I think it was misconstrued. But either way, you popped off and I was like, okay, like this is a girl. Like this is one of my friends, because I like that. I like being able to say, like, we're going to defend each other. We're going to defend each other in rooms we're not in. We're going to, anything I would say, I will talk my stuff. And so sometimes I will say something, but I'll say it to someone's face. You know what I mean?
Yep.
About like, oh, you're being crazy or you're being drama or whatever the case may be. It's never to talk badly. I will probably say worse things to my friend's face than behind their. I'll be like, they're the best, and behind their back, but in front of their face, I might be a little more like, get yourself together.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, have you seen, I know you have an array of children in different ages.
Gaggle. I like to call it gaggle. Gaggle of children.
And have you seen, I guess, you get to see, for instance, Lala go through high school and see those friendships. And then, what that progression looks like from freshman up.
Yeah. I just asked her today, I said, what's important to you right now as a friend? And she said, well, like similar hobbies. And we talked about that. I'm like, to me as a, 40-something-year-old woman, I don't really care that we have the same hobbies. Like if you're interested in something I'm not interested in, we just don't do that together.
Yep.
But she said similar hobbies, and she said, similar values. And I think I'm realizing that high school hasn't changed much from when I was in high school, other than maybe it's more brutal, where it's like, it's a popularity contest. And if you don't do the things, and what I realize now as an adult is all those girls that were like the most popular, most of them were trying to fit in too. They just had to go further than everybody else. And it depends on your circle. But yeah, I mean, Delilah's in mode where she's kind of now as a junior in high school said, friends aren't as important to me anymore. In the beginning, I wanted to have everyone like me, and now I'm kind of just put my head down and doing what I need to do. My younger kids, my 6 and my 7-year-old, I see their two different personality types really change the dynamic. Arrow's like, could not care less about people, and everyone wants to be her friend. She just walks through the world doing her thing, and everyone's talking, and she's just doesn't even pay mind. And Phoenix loves everybody. He wants to be friends with every single person. He's like, I want to be friends with that kid. I've never seen that boy, and he's so sweet. And sometimes to a point of like clinkiness, to where people are like, so it also shows too, like the different personality traits of, how you have to kind of just do your own thing and find your own tribe of people, because I veered more towards Arrow of just like, if I get friends from this, that's cool. If I don't really care. But seeing my son be so sweet and pure, where he's like, we had a birthday party for him when he was 5, and we had to invite the entire school, 100 kids. Not my finest moment, because I had to pick between like saying no, which is what I probably should have done, and explaining to my kid that I liked inclusiveness and that I liked that he wanted to do that. We obviously didn't have a couple hundred kids show up, but there was a lot of kids that showed up. And the teacher was like, bless your heart, what are you doing? And I said, I'm not going to always be able to do, and I explained to him, like, we'll never be able to do this again. But I thought it was cool for him to understand, like, yeah, you shouldn't try to include as many people as possible in things.
Yep. No. And I think that's so important, because I look back to playing basketball and playing sports, and my core group of friends at that time of my life were my teammates.
Yeah.
And we liked to do the same things. We had a similar schedule, and it was great. And some of those people outside of, say, basketball, we really don't have anything in common. But that is what held that glue together.
Yeah, you had something to relate on.
I think something else with friendships as I get older is I realize how close I am to my sisters. And so I've really, even over the past like few years, have really been able to, I mean, my one sister, I talk to her probably every single day. She's 10 years older than me, but we're now, as we're getting older, it's kind of morphing all together. I'm no longer I am the little sister, but I'm no longer, oh, the little sister that's still, in school, or the little sister that's still making, some bad choices, or the little sister that, is, oh
You're the
yeah,
mess
this
up,
is what
Laura.
she's doing. And now it's, oh, it's there, I'm the little sister, but I've accomplished a lot in my life.
They're seeing you as an adult now.
And they call me for advice.
Yeah.
And so it's really a humbling experience when you can start having those relationships also with your family members, because whether they like it or not, whether they want to get mad at you or not, you guys are still blood related and probably going to get over it at some point.
I do think people that have a lot of siblings tend to have a better conflict resolution to problems, because you're used to like resoluting things pretty quickly and having to deal with that. I think now that I'm thinking about some of the friends that I have, the ones that have, a lot of siblings are a lot more like, I'm over it, where in my past I tend to hold grudges or like cut people off completely if I decided like, okay, this isn't going to go. But I think that that's important with friendship too. As I've grown up, I've started to realize like there's deal breakers and there's just things that you have to get through.
Yep.
So,
and I was raised almost like an only child for the huge age gap in between me. So like my older sister, and she was 20 when I was born.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And so a lot of times not that I don't have good conflict resolution, because I think I have great conflict resolution. But I think as far as like sibling wise, yeah, my brother used to tease me as a kid and I had to deal with it and whatnot, but it never was anything super crazy or some stories I hear about my older sibling.
Right.
And so they like to say I was the spoiled little, like, not a brat, but like the little spoiled, the youngest and all that. And I don't particularly see it, because I was not the favorite child in my opinion. But it's a really humbling experience, because I even look at my son who, if he had a brother or sister, it would be really, really difficult, because he would be put into situations where he probably wouldn't know how to, resolve an issue with his little brother or sister.
Yeah.
I'm not having any kids, by the way.
You're not making an
Let me
announcement.
preface that.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think that your family dynamic does definitely tie into like your friendships and your choice of friendships and those kind of things. So I think that that's true of like how you can resolve that. So yeah, so we're gonna be talking about and having a guest that talks to us about their friendships and lifelong friendships.
Yes, we're excited.
And we have an amazing guest on today, Scott Stephenson. Hi, Scott.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Great. Thanks for coming down
No,
today.
thank you so much for asking me to be on. I'm really flattered.
Yes. Well, we're excited. We want to know a little bit about you first, to just kind of start off with hearing why you're here, where you come from, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So I'm from an Army family. So it's my mom, my dad, and my two younger brothers that are twins. So every couple of years we we move, just part of the kind of the military gig, right? So I remember people would always ask where you're from. I'd be like, oh, I'm from Oklahoma and Texas and Maryland and Virginia and Northern Virginia and Southern Virginia and Tennessee and Kentucky, and it would just kind of go on. And so, of course, then just to be difficult, I was active duty military as well. So then I moved around a bunch more. I finally settled on, I'm from Virginia, because that's where my folks kind of ended up and retired and stuff like that. So I'm blessed with an amazing family. Younger brothers are twins. I always tell everybody my mom was diagnosed with twins when I was about 4.5. Right?
Yeah.
The good old days came to an end then. But I would say I'm probably the only older brother that wishes he was a triplet. My younger brothers are two of the most amazing humans on the planet. And now I've been with my wife for 26 years. We met in Virginia. And we have two beautiful children that are actually young ladies now. One's 25, lives in Orlando, works for Disney and Universal. And my youngest, who's just a Spitfire, is at CSU right now, finishing up her degree in criminology and sociology. So proud dad, smoking hot, beautiful wife, who's just an incredible human being, a great family. So I'm one of the luckiest people you ever meet. I'm blessed. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Okay,
right?
So that's your starting. So you and I have a connection through real estate leadership.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into that.
So, it was, you ever like the universe kind of comes together and directs you in different places, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So I'd run my own technology firm for about 18 years. So did a ton of defense contracting, a ton of corporate work, and was really, really successful with that. The problem is oftentimes when I'd win these big contracts, I would then disappear and not see said beautiful wife and awesome kids and stuff like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I was kind of wearing low on that. COVID started showing up, this thing none of us knew
What it was
anything
gonna be.
about, or
Yeah.
remember every 2 weeks it was only going to be 2 more weeks, and that
Yep.
went for over a year, I think. And so I was just I wanted to get back in the people business. I've always loved being around people and stuff, and so I was going after a local project with NASA, and then they have you do these like executive resumes and stuff. And so I was doing this resume, and a dear friend of mine, a guy named Kato Mitchell, he and I are in this just group of friends. And whenever somebody's like, hey, I need a new attorney or a new accountant, or does anybody know anybody who'd be good for this position or that position or this resource, we just kind of throw names out because we all, have trusted resources and stuff. And so in the middle of this resume, I get a text from Kato who's like, hey, I'm looking for somebody who knows how to lead teams, has a business background, knows how to work with people. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, huh. And so I just drug the resume from my screen into this text stream and hit send. And I think before I took my finger off the mouse, the phone's ringing. And it was, hey, stop messing with me. I'm not messing around. I really hate
it's not a
somebody.
real estate leader. It's pretty much same difference, right?
Well, I was just going to be a subcontractor. I wasn't
Right.
entering the astronaut program or anything like that, right? I was probably
Still,
building a
yep.
video wall for him or something. But I've all, there's satisfaction finishing, a multi-million-dollar project and looking at what you built and
Sure.
seeing how it may serve soldiers or airmen or other folks like that, or entertain people. But there's a whole different level of satisfaction of like really having the privilege to impact people's lives by working with them and maybe helping them see blind spots or showing them what their powers and abilities and skills are,
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I took the risk. It was just the universe trying to tell me something. Interestingly enough, later that day, I got a call from another company we did a ton of work with, and they're like, hey, they're starting to close down some of these sites. Do you have any extra work so we don't have to lay people off?
Wow.
So I was able to take care of my people. I was able to take care of any of the work obligations I had. And so it was just like this really weird, harmonious, like, hey, you're going to go do this now.
Yeah.
So I just listened to the universe for once. And
Stopped resisting.
yeah, and I've never been happier. And it's led to, things like being on podcasts and really getting to know people and what their dreams and goals are. I mean, if you're not inspired by that, I don't know, maybe you need a little bit more soul or something. I don't know. But no, people are amazing. So
Awesome. Okay. Well, so the whole topic of our podcast today is around friendship.
okay.
And why we chose to have you on as a guest is you have some pretty impressive friendships. And I think that you kind of covered a little bit about bouncing back referrals from each other and,
Yeah.
giving recommendations and job opportunities. But can you tell me a little bit about your friend group and how that works?
Yeah. So interestingly, I got a call last night. I was in Colorado Springs for a conference, and a buddy of mine called that I met in Virginia. Right. I just got
Your homeland.
Yeah, my homeland. That's what we're going to call it for now, right? But I met him one day coming back from a run. I believe it or not, I used to run about 50, 60 miles a week. And I just come back from a run, and him and another guy were moving into my apartment building. And we talked, and it was, guy to guy. So you puff up a little bit when you're younger and everything. And, probably within 2 or 3 days, we found ourselves having a drink together and just visiting and stuff like that. And man, if you'll get out of your own ego and your own headspace, sometimes the world delivers amazing people to you. So this guy, Danny, ended up being a Marine Corps helicopter pilot, led over 200 missions in Iraq. Just incredible story. Has a beautiful family. But we met when we were before all that, and there's just these different people that come into your life at different times that, if you let them, can just have this staying power, I was with Danny. Danny and I took a road trip to visit my brothers at Radford University, and I met my wife. So
Okay.
he was there the night I met my wife, right?
Wow.
And so, people like me. So that happened yesterday.
And both of you met before you both were in the military?
So no, I had just gotten out. He had just graduated from the Naval
Oh,
Academy.
okay.
And was going
Going
through
in.
Yeah, and was going in full time. So just, yeah,
A lot of parallels.
a lot of parallels and kind of going in different directions, right? 'Cause I
Yeah.
moved to Colorado not long after that stuff. A group of friends like Kato, I mentioned, a group of guys that did business and built trust with each other and didn't feel like anybody was just taking. To back up on that real quick, I have a great friend of mine, Ken. I love and miss you, Ken. Ken just moved to Georgia.
Oh, okay. I thought it was going to get a lot darker than.
No.
Okay.
No.
Hello, Ken. Hi, Ken. We're
Yes,
hello,
hello.
Ken. Okay.
Ken and I were sitting down having a discussion one time, and he looked at me and he said, there's two types of people. I'm like, there's probably more than that. And he goes, no, talking about relationships. He said, there's givers and there's takers.
Mhm.
And one's not wrong and one's not right.
Yeah.
But as soon as you can identify what a person is, you can either really engage them and keep your guard up, right? Because takers are really good at taking.
Sure.
But when you find those other givers that are really interested in you being at your best or pouring into you or your causes or whatever that looks like, experiences, those are game changers, right? So I had this great conversation with Ken, and the more I think back on those key friendships, they're always givers. You know what I mean? And it's not even something you need to ask for. Do you have a friend that is just excited when you're excited?
Yeah.
Right?
Awesome.
It's me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Excited.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah, you need that. I
Yep.
love that you said that. I think even more than like the givers and takers, because I think you can go through seasons of that, right? I think some people are always takers, are always givers, but I think you can play different roles depending on different times. But I think the thing that you said that rings really true that I haven't really heard put so well before is getting rid of your ego. I think that's a lot of friendship killers. I think that's a lot of like, you're competing with the person next to you. You can't be happy for them. You're always wanting more than what they have. Like, I think in my experience, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've had surface friendships, but real friendships is I'm humble. Like sometimes I'm not winning and you're winning, and I can still be happy for you, and I can be honest about I'm struggling and those kind of things.
Yeah, I think that there's an authenticity that those people naturally bring.
Yeah.
But I also think a lot of it comes down to energy, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes when you meet people, you're like, oh, we're kind of on the same wavelength there.
Totally.
And I think, energy isn't necessarily a consistent thing. So that's why it's so cool when, even though you're on two different timelines, if your energy's in sync at that moment, you can really build on that,
Yep.
And what's funny about Danny, the guy I had dinner with last night, if you asked either of us, it's like, oh, dude, we ran crazy and hung out for 2 years. And we did the math. We only lived in the same place and hung out for 8 months, but we have been friends now for 30 years.
Just
And
super
always look
impactful.
at each other. It was just impactful. It was that right moment in time. So, ego, I think, is one of them. I think we got to get out of our heads sometime, the rat race that life is. And if you can stop and actually appreciate those moments,
Yeah.
you're so much stronger for it. You know what I mean? That so have gratitude for those things, and it gives you a lot more meaning.
For sure.
Yeah.
So as far as your, in your experience of all the friendships that you've had, what is the toughest situation you've ever had to deal with a friend?
Yeah, well, that's great. That's a good question.
We want to hear your hurt.
Yeah.
So I think I'll draw this to and then there's no right or wrong in this situation, right?
Sure.
I'll draw it back to a business experience. So I had a business partner, dear friend of mine. I still absolutely love and adore this guy and his family. But we had never kind of sat down and defined what success looked like, right? And so what I found is if those two variables are wildly different, each party
Yeah.
is going to act wildly different, right? And so we're still great friends to this day, but there was definitely a patch where we were having to kind of dissect a business because, well, I assumed one thing and you assumed another. And thank God the friendship came back around because it's really, really important to me.
Yeah.
But that's been a stressor. But I think also just, and forgive me, I can only kind of speak from the male perspective.
Sure.
right? I think in our 20s, we're trying to figure out and prove who we are,
Yep.
right? In late 20s and our 30s, we're trying to prove that we have enough money, or we're driving the right car, we live in the right neighborhood, we bought a big enough house, we,
Right.
the kids, all that
The
stuff.
Joneses.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I think it's just kind of the maybe societal programming or something like that,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of, we go on this ride. And then we start having real moments and figuring out what's really important.
Mm.
Mhm.
And it's not, it's not the car or the logo on your clothes or and stuff like that. And I think if you can make it through that period and have a couple friends, once you kind of figure out what the important things are, you get to kind of double down on those with them,
Yeah.
right? Let's go have more experiences. I'd much rather go to like a concert with some friends and have an experience, or go on a weekend trip or something.
Yep.
Then go out and just blow a bunch of money.
Mhm.
You know
Yep.
what I mean? So I think being hungry for experiences, it also gives you camaraderie and shared experiences, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Did I answer your question?
You did. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, but the business stuff, I think, not setting expectations up front was disrespectful to our friendship.
Mm.
And so that was tough.
Yeah.
Yep. Are you still friends with?
Yeah,
This person?
really good friends with him. Call him a brother. Saw him a couple weeks ago up in Ouray, Colorado. So,
Oh, nice.
and our families are still tight. It's just, I'm blessed with the way we were both able to be givers.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's really cool that you've been able to, identify where people fit in. And I think that that's one of the hard things too, is I think that sometimes I remember, I don't know if I'm aging myself at all, but I remember watching shows like Friends, right? And seeing all these young people living
Like
together.
Friends is not that old.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
That
it.
is
I don't know.
not
I
that
don't
old.
But I always yearned for those kind of friendships where it's like, oh my gosh, everybody lives in the same place. They all go places together. And I don't know. I'm sure there are people out there that have those kind of friendships where they're just like attached. And
I have had those friendships.
you have, yeah.
Many
I
of
mean,
them.
and I
Okay.
never. I think also probably like you went to college and had like that environment. I never had that. I went straight to work and kind of fend for myself and those kind of things. And so I think it also depends on like what kind of, if you grow up in the same place, if you have
Yeah.
a lot of the same, dynamics of families and those kind of things. But what I'm realizing now too is whether or not you have those situations, I think your friendships change based on your different sections of life, right?
Yeah.
Like what I was talking to my teenage daughter about this. So when she started high school, 4 days into high school, she's like, my best friend and these are all girls she met 4 days ago, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, please just keep it simple. Like, don't get too involved in anything. Like, you can be friends with everybody, but like, don't get too invested. Like, and sure enough, 3 months in, everybody's fighting. Nobody gets along. There's bullying happening. There's drama. There's boys. There's all these things. And she just told me today, because I was asking her, knowing that we were going to talk about friendship today. Like, what do you think about friendship? Like, is it hard at this age? And she said, honestly, I remember what you told me, which is do what you have to do. And if people gravitate towards that, great. And if you don't have any friends until, later in life on attracting that same kind of mentality, that's okay. Like I think people sometimes put such an emphasis on wanting friends instead of, it's the same with like people who want to be in relationships all the time.
Right. Oh, yeah.
They want to fill
Serial
that spot.
killers and-
They want
yeah,
to
right,
fill that
totally.
They
spot
broke
more.
up yesterday. They have a new boyfriend
Yeah.
today.
And it's like, that's fine, but like, I think you're filling a spot more than actually looking at a person and saying like, this is a good person. I have room for another good person in my life, but I don't need someone there.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
get it.
No, and I think just as you go through different parts of your life, your friends sometimes change, right?
Totally.
I can totally relate to right now of there's certain people that I was really good friends with, and unfortunately we're just growing apart and not necessarily just our likes, but who we are as people. And I think, Chantel and I always talk about this, that we gravitate towards just really good people, like genuinely good people. And if that's not you, that we just might not be a good fit. So
Yeah, and we were talking about this too, like even, I mean, I think when you're, in your 20s and 30s, even maybe you want to have the same interests.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really care about the same
Or
interests
you-
with my friends because I'm probably not going to do that much stuff with
Or
them.
you think you're supposed to have those
Totally.
interests,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she goes on
We-
hikes and goes
we
to
are
the gym and does all
completely
kinds of stuff I could care
opposite.
less about.
Like, you can look at us, we're opposite. You find out our interests, it's opposite.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're friends other than a previous job put us together to train together. So
See, but that's that energy coming.
yeah, no. And I think it's so fun because, I have a wide variety of friends and it's not a one size fit all. And I could put some of my friends in the same group, like at the same table, and they would just be wildly different. And so I think that's really exciting just to see that piece of growth. Because I look back even 5 years ago and my friend groups and different things weren't the same, and I've evolved into a different person. And that's the difference between, my mid-20s to now my 30s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well, and I think, we've all had those stories of maybe people that we grew up with that, maybe went down the wrong path for a while, but
Yeah.
then came back. Or
Yep.
maybe we were the person, again, getting rid of that ego that went down the wrong path and then came back,
Yep.
and I think that shows up, and I think, grace is important. If it's there.
Yep.
And like you were saying, the different people kind of fit in different spaces. You know what I mean? I have friends that, through the military or through a relationship, it's almost like a primal thing.
Yep.
An unspoken thing that if I was in danger, this person, we're swinging together. We're going to
Yep.
fight our way out of this,
Yep.
right? Some people are so intriguing, maybe intellectually. Oh my gosh, I love the way you think, or I could get better by learning from you.
For sure.
You know? So there's different, and I don't know if anybody's ever defined what those are. But I've seen different just kind of compartments where people plug in, right?
For sure.
But
Even
no,
like family, when people have a really
Totally.
big, people who both have a very big family focus, like they'll have that identity of just, yeah, we're both really family people. We like to do, things with our kids, or we're really about, you're very, confident in the pillar of your marriage and being a good husband, and that being something that you always bring up. I think that gravitates to other people who are, somebody's out partying every weekend and cheating on their wife. That's probably not going to be the person you spend all your weekends
Yeah.
with.
No,
No.
yeah.
Like,
no thanks.
no.
No, and I think one of the other things is just, the way I grew up, me and my brothers were always the new kid in town, right?
Yep.
Every 3-4 years or whatever. And so, I think the friendships I'm most grateful for, obviously outside of my wife and my children and stuff, and it's weird being friends with your kids now at different
Yeah.
levels, right?
Yeah,
that's
adults.
definitely,
Yeah, have a beer with them or a glass of wine. How was, and to be able to talk about things that aren't on Nickelodeon or whatever,
Louis.
Oh gosh, Bluey. Yes, I have nieces that love Bluey. But I think one of the coolest things is the friendship I was just privileged to grow with my brothers. Because we were all we had.
Yep.
Whenever we would move, and it's not a poor guys. It's just we moved to a different place and we're what we
Cue the
knew.
sad music.
Right. Yeah. Don't feel sorry for me. Right. And so just to see that translate through all the different phases of growing up, I go off to the Army, come home, and they both grew a foot and got into wrestling. So that was just a horrible, nasty fight, right? For me
Yeah.
to survive.
Yep.
And then them going off to college and them growing families and us growing and Karen and I growing our family and stuff. And it's just, I think with my friends and with my brothers especially, I'm in awe of who they are.
Yep.
So it's easy to be around. Here's the other thing I'll say too. It should never be super difficult to be friends with somebody.
I
Yep.
believe that.
Being somebody's friend should be pretty straightforward and pretty easy. And if it's not, maybe give it some room,
Evaluation.
let it breathe a little bit, or
Yeah.
maybe take a step back, see where that goes.
Yep.
Well, and you made a good point too about I find that, I have a lot of military in my family and I never traveled or was part of that situation, but military babies do a good job of making friends, because they have to start over so many times. I mean, it's very often that you hear somebody go, well, I don't want to move my kid from the school. And it's like, it might be good for them. It might be good for them to not be so stuck in their little group of just the 10 people that they know from, kindergarten to
Yeah.
high school. And I think that that's something I have really noticed is shout out to the military families that, you know, their kids are just super resilient and cool personalities and able to kind of adapt to different situations. So that's probably another reason you have a lot of good friends.
Yeah, I definitely think there's some of that adapt and overcome, part of that. But it was just a really cool way to grow up. It's funny, my wife grew up in like one house, two
Her whole
houses,
life.
right?
Yeah.
Her whole life. And so probably every 3 or 4 years, she'll see me with a panic look on my face. She's like, oh God, what? And I'm like, we need to sell everything and move. We've been in Colorado 25 years now. So, about every 3, 4 years, she has to walk me off that ledge. It's like, oh, we're good.
We're okay.
We're good. But yeah, so I think, and even like we go back a couple of years,
Yeah.
and it's always been easy to give each other a call and, hey, how are
Yep.
things going? Anything I can do to help? And it's always been two givers, like, hey,
Truly.
what do you need? Or we'd send people to each other that needed help
Yes.
and stuff. And that's what it comes down to. A lot of times we make it more difficult.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so it should be easy, I think.
I think even it's like sense of humor, like figuratively we ball bust each other, and that's always really nice too, because you want somebody you can also give it.
Yeah.
I like the 3 compliments, 1 roast kind of
You're
cadence.
What you get-
backwards.
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like roast in there every once in a while and make sure that you feel. But I think that that's kind of important too. Is like similar. My daughter said that. She said similar sense of humor, like someone that you can kind of, they're not gonna run off crying when you're
Yeah.
being silly.
Well, I also think there's a level of trust there too, that getting the opportunity to meet you, being you're attached to Shantell.
Yep.
There,
She's attached to me,
no,
actually.
that's
Yeah,
fair.
she's bigger. I'm in the
Like-
baby Bjorn.
Yes.
I'm not gonna paint a visual of Shantell on a front pack on you or anything. But
Baby
More to
Bjorn.
come.
but if you but there's like there's a sense of, all right, you're good. So it's easy to
Yep.
not have the guards up too high and actually get to find out who somebody is.
That's true. Like finding friends through association of like that gravitation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, I always worked a ton. And so 99% of my friendships come from work. Like
Okay.
that's all I did. Like I'm not really that interesting. I don't really have any cool hobbies or interests. It's pretty much work and TV.
Podcast is
and
She's interesting.
eating.
She's more interesting than she's making herself sound to
I
be.
did that.
Please subscribe to our podcast.
Right, Laura's interesting. She's interesting enough for those.
I got a lot going on.
That's right. But I think that, what I always now, go back to is people who had good work ethic and they had to have integrity to keep long-term jobs. And they usually wanted to help people because they were in leadership roles and like some of those key factors that tied into people that I liked being friends with because I could see the good in them of being a giver through that
Yeah.
capacity.
Well, and I think sometimes too, we go through rough patches or difficult situations that are hard.
Yeah.
And I think having good people near you gives you a real good sounding board.
For sure.
But also sometimes it's just hard to make that call you have to make, and it sucks. But to have somebody that's just like, dude, I get it.
Yeah.
Or it sucks, but it's the right move. Or you know what I mean?
Or give you that tough
that
truth.
tough
Yeah,
love.
that tough truth
The
that's
tough
like
truth,
you
yeah,
have to hear
you're-
from only somebody who's gonna
You're out of bounds. You need a
Yeah.
and that's a it's a form of love. If you care enough about somebody to be like, hey, you're screwing up
I agree.
and you're better than this. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a shot to the soul. And I'd be lying if people had said that to me. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And I think sometimes there's those friends that you've given that tough love to and they don't take that feedback well. And you
Right.
guys end up not being friends. I have a friend in particular I gave some tough love to. We didn't talk for 4 years. And 4 years came and I got a random phone call and I had to double take on my phone, like, this person's not really calling me. Like, what is this? And it was a reconnection message of just basically like, I didn't like what you had to say 4 years ago. I'm glad you said it.
Wow.
And we're friends to this day. So, those little things. I guess another question I have for you that kind of hit home, because it's been a struggle in my family. You mentioned that you're now friends with your daughters
Yeah.
and whatnot. And in my household, my parents had a very hard time transitioning from that parent, I'm your parent, to now, you know what, I don't parent you, and we now more have an adult friendship. piece. And so was there any type of transition for you when your kids became adults, or what does that dynamic look like?
Yeah, well, I that's a great question. I'd love to tell you they're still not on the payroll, but
So they are still parented.
cars need tires, tuition checks need to be
I
written,
would stay
books
on
need
the
to be
payroll
bought.
forever if I were them. Stay on that payroll, kids.
But you know, I think a lot of it is the strength of my wife, right? And because we have girls, and
Yep.
so to see how strong my wife is, really gave them the strength to kind of explore and turn into the people that they wanted to be or they were called to be, right? And so I think not having a lot of judgment around that and being like, okay, let's see where this goes, kid, you know,
Yep.
and having faith in them because I know they're good humans. We're not friends all the time, and I'm not, you know, yelling on the front porch all the time or anything like that, but to actually have a conversation about how was your day? What's going on with this? And it not being, you know, kind of like, you know, as parental, but more, yeah, I'm going through this right now. It sucks. My daughter Kenzie called me, and this was profound for me. And she said, "Hey, I'm having a problem at work, and I know you consult people all the time. How would you handle this?"
Wow.
And I was like, "Holy smokes! I'm not just the guy that like pays for things and drives the car."
Also my phone bill.
Yeah. But that was really profound for me. That she would ask me something like that, right?
But she sees
Mhm.
that respect of more than just my dad. This is somebody who like has knowledge of this topic.
That's what I'm going with.
That's what
I
we're
pray
going
that
with.
that's what it is.
That's what it was.
But to have that conversation with, you know, someone that used to take the ballet practice or soccer practice, you know, it's just really cool. So, you know, I think we ebb and flow out of the parent and the friend thing. I think you definitely run risk if you're trying to be somebody's a child's friend all the time.
Yep.
Again, that's where kind of that strength of my wife. I
Yep.
got to be the fun guy, right?
Yep.
That's rules a lot of times.
Yeah, right. No, and I'm sure
My
that
husband brings home ice cream after I make the kids do chores, and I'm like,
yeah,
"It's
no, and I'm
awesome."
sure that's a real like the struggle's real. I haven't lived that.
Right.
Yep.
And then yeah, so yeah, it's like bumpers. You just kind of figure out how to stay in those lanes and stuff. But it's so rewarding to have two amazing kids that are good humans and want to go out and do good things in the world and stuff. And yeah, we've had our ups and downs and dramas and stuff through the years, but looking back, it's super cool. And my kids are dope. They're awesome. So
Cool.
yeah.
I read a book recently and they talked about, he said, this might trigger some people, so I'm gonna tread lightly, but it basically said like in the early years, your parenting is so important because you have to raise a human that you're gonna like. And I think a lot of times, I'm not saying that to you, your parents like you. But I'm just saying though, like sometimes it has to do with like maybe early boundaries not being set to where then they can't let go of the reins because they maybe lost control early on. And parenting is hard, right? Like I'm realizing this tenfold every day. You get your karma back of realizing things after the fact
Right.
and looking around and being like, oh, I guess that made a lot more sense than I thought, or
Yeah.
you know, whatever the case may be. But I just think that some of it has to do with the parent's role of understanding when it is time to be a friend too.
Yeah, well, and I think those lines have been completely blurred.
Yeah.
And again, my children are 20 and 25. And so, you know, I think the study was back in the day, you pretty much lost your parental influence around age 12. So you had a nail between 1 and 12
Yeah.
really good to kind of stay connected. And then friends' opinions and stuff like that tended to have a little bit higher preference. That was before social media really was a big thing, right? So now, you know, caring enough to take the iPad away or phone away or whatever else, or explaining
Yeah.
that there's more to life than, you know, dancing
Video
on
game.
video or you know, all the different things, is really, it's something I didn't experience. So I'm not envious of, you know, the hard work that folks are having to put into that, but and those things program us just like, you know, we go back to the TV show Friends, right?
Right.
You guys brought up that was, you know, that was our marker for this is what friendship's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have dinner together. Joey loves sandwiches and do all the things,
Right.
right?
This is what she was wearing. I liked the fashion.
Okay, all right.
Good. Rachel
Um,
had some nice fashion.
Okay.
Bloomies. Go ahead.
Anyway, no, but you know,
This is a woman-based
no, I
podcast,
get it.
so
I get it.
you know,
No,
you're
it's
gonna have to
okay.
roll with
Sorry.
us sometime.
No, I hear you. You're gonna get so much hate now from me. I'm sorry.
These are
But
only criticism.
you know, the kind of like we were talking about friends, you know, these different societal things or platforms are painting what they're trying to program we kids want their or think their lives are supposed to look like.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think if you can, your kids can have a little bit of confidence and really kind of, hey, this is what I like, and I want to get good at this. I'm double down on that stuff. You
For
know?
sure.
So it's cool.
Well, it's kind of important to talk about that because, like I said, you know, whether you're, you know, 60 or 20, you have problems sometimes with friendship. And I think that to your point, I wonder that about the new generation. I had a girl that worked for me. She was probably 18 years old. I think she had, no joke, like 20,000 people on her Instagram. And I remember her sitting in my office one day crying and saying, I don't have any friends. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you have 20,000 people that like follow your every move and like
Yeah.
all your things and talk about how beautiful you are. None of those people were genuine relationships. And I think that's another thing that has been affected from the social media area is that we're not genuine with each other. We're not showing the behind the curtain
Yeah.
flaws. We're showing the best versions of ourselves. And when you really know someone, Laura and I can talk about this. We spend time outside of the social media realm. You know, it's not all glitzy and glammy. And so that affects people too.
Yeah, life's definitely a contact sport, you know. I was just thinking about some of my friends and that influence you were talking about. Some of my like favorite things to do now, whether it's fly fish. I learned to fly fish
Same.
with a friend of mine because it's like, dude, we should really get a fly fishing. Or we watched a movie and there was fly. That's awesome. We should do that. Or learn how to appreciate whiskey or scotch
Okay.
or cigars,
Kind
you
of
know?
trying to speak a little more.
And so being like kind of open to or being impressed with the people you're spending time with and being like, that looks pretty cool. Teach me about that.
Yep.
Mm,
You know, we now have these different things we do together. You
yeah.
know what I mean? And it's neat.
Different hobbies that you can kind of build together.
And just different ways to appreciate different things. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's kind of cool.
I know this might sound a little weird, but one of the things that I appreciate most about my friends is to sit in silence.
I love that.
And
Same.
you'd be surprised how many people can't do that. So it makes me appreciate my friends that can so much more. There have been times that I have gone, the intention was me and my friends were going to go grab dinner or we were going to go just watch a movie and we just sit there in silence and it's great.
I don't know if guys do that, but do you? Do you guys do that? Do you just sit in
I
silence?
have spent entire days with friends of mine where we have said next to nothing.
I love it.
And
Well,
just
I
been
guess I
like-
should guess that because you men tend to talk a little less in general. That's
Right.
a little more sense,
But
actually.
like, yeah, I mean, like fly fishing. I can go fly fishing and maybe we'll talk a little bit on the drive up, and then we just see each other down the river, and it's like, okay, good.
Yeah.
And just it's cool just to be around people when they're doing their thing. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So,
Okay.
but no, I get it.
I
And-
agree.
And, there's comfort in that. I think it goes back to that energy, right? There's
Yep.
comfort in just
That
sitting in that
aura.
energy. with each other.
Yeah.
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 I agree. And I'm a little more, I don't know if everyone's like this. I think I'm a weird breed when it comes to this because of the way that I grew up and I grew up without a lot of family members and without a lot of like stability. I'm really guarded in my friendship levels. So like there's the friends of the, you know, AKA, you know, somebody, you're nice with them, you can say hello and those kind of things. And then it kind of starts to build into like respect and a reciprocal relationship. And then it goes into, and Laura knows this, what's my weird thing about friendship?
Oh, she doesn't let people in her house.
It takes like a long time to let someone
Fair.
in my house. Like I just have a very like my grandfather used to say, your friends are your friends from the door out. And his whole philosophy was like, you just don't let people into your safe space unless you know that they're like really quality people. And so Laura and I were first friends. How long were we friends for?
I don't even know.
2 years.
Is that why I keep getting robbed?
It's true. That's why you sit out. But it was and
No,
it was-
she would literally sit outside on the porch.
That's awesome. I get it. I get it.
But to me, it also means like, you know, once you're in that, you can come sit at my couch all day and hang out and we don't have to
Mhm.
do much. Like that,
Yeah.
that's a safety thing for me. So I don't know if everyone's like that, but to me, it's also like protect your own friendship security too.
Yeah,
in a sense,
But
you
it's
know?
also like the energy of your home. So, you know, if you're just
Totally.
letting anybody come into your home, there's all different types of energy. And my mom's very Catholic. She might say there's some bad spirits coming into your house and now they're lingering in your house
Yeah.
from the people that you're letting in. And that can really just affect your daily life and your daily mood. I know not everybody has those same feelings or beliefs, some of those things, but it really can be true.
I totally feel, and even like, and not that like, I'm kind of good, so like this might be different now, but it's like, even back in the day, it was like, if you didn't really know that person, like they could be casing your house, they could be doing, you know, different stuff like that. And so again, I don't live that life anymore. I don't think anyone's coming and trying to like steal my stuff, but
You
I
never
just
know.
got very,
Yeah.
right. I just got very like particular with when, you know, people were my friends, what level of friendship that was. And there's a very small group of people that I'm like, Laura's been in my house when I'm not at my house. She locked herself out of my house when I was out of my house.
Well, and I think there's two things to that, and I'm sure we've all heard the old adage that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with,
Totally.
right?
Yes.
So I think at a certain point in time, depending on what you want out of your life, that's something important to pay attention to.
Yeah.
The other thing with like letting people into your inner sanctum or your home, right? With me, I know what you're talking about. And I think one of the other things that happens is once you've earned that with me, you never need an invitation.
Totally.
Like,
Same.
you know?
Yep.
And yeah,
Yeah,
and same
once
with
the
family.
door is open, the door's open. And I
don't-
Unless you lock it yourself outside the
That's true.
door.
If you
Oh,
lock
yeah.
yourself out of the door, that's
Which-
your own fault.
Ring camera has me on.
I was in
great footage.
Hawaii.
Oh, okay, perfect.
She was going to my house to videotape a video for her newsletter. And she goes, "Oh, can I use your background? You know, we have this fireplace, whatever." I was like, "Yeah, go ahead. We're gonna be in Hawaii." And then my husband's like, "Laura locked herself out." She's like, "Oh my God, this is so bad." And you just, and I'm like in the ring camera, like, "Do I need to call a locksmith?" She's like, "Yeah." It was just hilarious. But I was thinking about the fact that, like, again, you know, our friendship evolved to something where like she can absolutely go to my house. She doesn't need an invitation. She can stop by if she needs to grab something. I always loved those friends when I was younger, just because, you know, I didn't have a lot of things in my home that were very like domesticated.
Okay.
I had those friends that like their house was the open forum. I don't know if you guys had those, but it was
Yep.
like come one, come all. Their mom would feed everybody dinner. You could
Yep.
spend the night anytime. And I always thought that was cool. I think I've always just been too fearful for
Yeah.
that kind of home.
No, I hear. You know, looking back, I think we were the house where a lot of kids would come and hang out and stuff. And
You were the hangout crib.
well, I to a certain point,
Sure.
you know what I mean? I don't think we had a heroin den or anything like that.
Yeah, you
right?
were the party house, but you were the welcoming house.
You were,
Yeah,
you were the
so-
house everyone hung out after school
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
you know.
or kids that maybe didn't want to go home or whatever, you know, we were always tried to be real inviting.
Yep.
To that. And you know, it's what's crazy about that is I think the kindness of my children's heart helped us have that attitude. You know what I mean? So credit goes to them. But it's cool. But yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And no, it shouldn't be hard.
That's right.
And listen to energy because it's trying to tell you something.
I agree. And I mean, I always tell people too, you know, I've always been pretty stern about not spending time with people that I don't like or respect. And it's weird because a lot of people I had a girlfriend tell me this once. She said, "I just don't know how to not want everybody to like me."
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so weird because I don't care. Like if I don't think you're a good person, like I'm glad if you don't like me. I take that as a compliment. Like if you're crappy, I don't want you thinking I'm great. And so it was interesting to me. But when you think about the fact of like with friendship, to me, I've always said, I already don't have enough time to spend with my good friends. Like I'm already limited and wish I could spend more time with them and wish I could do more things with them. Why would I spend even a minute with somebody who I don't find to be integrity based and a giver in some sense, and
Yeah.
you know, adding that value of, you know, upping your stock of you know, education or business insight or talent or something that
Yeah.
says like we should spend more time together because I'm getting fulfilled or we're building each other up.
Yeah. And I pray that we can all resonate with this. But I mean, have you ever had like an evening you didn't want to end? And
Totally.
Yes.
and you walk away and you're like, man, I'm just better for that last hour
Yeah.
or whatever it looked like. You know, those are some really impactful moments in life.
You're buzzing, you're on a high.
You really are. And it's all goodness. It's not like,
Yeah.
And it's so authentic or pure, you know what I mean? And so I love things like that.
Yeah.
You just feel better for having been in the same space. And it could go back to whether you're quiet or in the throes of something. So it's very cool.
Yeah, no, it's really fun also just to feed off your friends, because there might be the friends that I'm learning a lot from and we're having a very engaging, intelligent time. And then another day we're just sitting in silence, but it just feels great. And at the end of it, you're like, that was a good hangout session
Yeah.
or whatever we ended up doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super grateful that we're friends.
Oh, me too.
And I'm
Thank you.
super grateful that you got to tell us about your friendships. Because like I said, that's one of the things I've always felt really impressive about you is that when you say, oh, these guys I've been hanging out with for however many years and we do this and we do that. Like, I think that's really admirable. And I think there's people out there that are probably thinking, they're having a hard time with a friend or multiple friends or having friendship. Those are some good takeaways for that.
Oh, I'm grateful and back at you. You both. Thank you for being kind and letting me be on your show. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Kat.